Welcome back to Glydecast. I am your host, Shaggy, and with me is Legendary Griffin.
Hello, it's me again.
This is episode 4, Animation and Rigging with Legendary. So, unlike other episodes, just have Legendary with me today. Scheduling, of course, created some issues. That's what we get when it comes to having 4 different time zones. So we're just going to do a quick side episode here, which is going to be a full episode, but it's going to be basically talking about animation and rigging and basically what Griffin does for Glyde. And we're going to break that down a little bit. So it's going to be a very interesting, very informative episode, and I'm really looking forward to this.
Yeah, prepare yourself.
But before we get into the main topic, we are going to talk a little bit about news. Not going to talk about a whole lot because not all of us are here. But we do have a little bit of news. So, what you got?
So today I can tell you that we finally finished rigging and animating all 28 NPCs that will be wandering around in the Glyde world, which is very cool. That's a lot of dragons.
That is a lot, yes.
Yeah, and like some of our concepts we didn't quite get enough time to do, but I think 28's enough.
And keep in mind, this is just a demo that these are going to be in. Exactly. So that's crazy.
Yeah, and in other news, I can say that there's been a couple of gameplay tweaks here and there to further improve the, I guess, flow of the game, and I think all that's left to do is just implement all the dialogue and NPCs, and then the demo should be very close to being released, which is very cool.
That is. Though the ones that you just talked about, you said that you haven't been able to get all of them finalized for the demo. And are those going to be implemented into the actual full game? Is there going to be more than 28, or is that something you can't quite say yet?
It's a bit of a... honestly, not quite sure what's going to happen personally, but there is a good chance that a lot of stuff will be improved upon for the final game, because a lot of the current dragons have the same body type, and we obviously want to make it look like there's a range of different kinds of dragons rather than just different heads stuck on. So I'm hoping at least that there'll be a lot more variety coming in the full game.
Right. And I do remember when Val talked about you as well talked about that very first Earth Dragon that you guys came up with, the first one that you worked on, and Val mentioned about looking for it to try to see the differences. I did find it, and it's not noticeable from far away, but when you really look at the features, you can definitely tell how different it looks from the others, and then the similarities that the other ones have. But you only can notice that when you're right on it. So it's pretty cool to see that.
Yeah, I think there's 2 dragons that never actually had concept art. One of them being that Earth one, and then another one being a lightning dragon. So have fun with that information, I guess.
Oh, so now I gotta look for a lightning dragon that's slightly different.
Yes, I believe it is lightning.
That's gonna be challenging, because that one's gonna be challenging.
I feel like people will figure it out.
Okay. I'm gonna fire up Glyde in a little bit and take a look later on.
Nice.
So a couple other things that I'm going to mention, but I'm not going to get into detail without the other guys. But for patch updates, Crystal was released for a patch update to be able to figure it out. I'm not going to get into detail about that, but now Crystal is available into the demo, or this early access demo, which was a lot of fun. Actually, it was a lot of fun to be able to do this. Use this new ability, which is really powerful, I will say. Of course, we've had access into it in the training room, but to be able to use it in-game is actually completely different. Really enjoy that. We'll talk more about it in the next episode with Val and 1H on board. I'm going to let Val take care of this one more often, so I'm just going to... If you guys haven't found out about this by now, here's a little teaser. Thumbs up for Glyde. Just that's all I'm going to say. Thumbs up for Glyde. Unless you have more information on that you want to share, Griffin, that's all I'm going to say is thumbs up for Glyde.
I think that's pretty good.
All right, then we'll let Val explain a little more about that in the next episode. So, next thing is listener questions and feedback. We actually did get an email, our very first email to the show, so thank you so much. Unfortunately, we're not going to read it on this episode. We're going to wait until we get the full team to be able to answer these questions that was submitted to us. So I apologize that we're not going to read it on this episode, but it's just better to have everyone involved. But thank you so much for the email, and we will definitely get to it. And if you have any other questions, feel free to email us, as well as everyone else. Please send us those emails. We will love to have them on there, and we'll read them on the show. So that leads us to the main topic, which is ironically about animation and rigging. So let's get into it. All right, question 1. What is animation and why is it important for games?
Well, so animation itself is quite a broad medium. So we're talking taking something that's inanimate, and most of the time in the shape of a character, and then giving it the illusion of life. This can be like drawings, clay models, 3D generated characters and puppets, things like that. That's giving something animation. In terms for why it's important for games, it's basically the immersion bringer, and what can help keep retaining attention on a product. So game animation itself is quite unique compared to movie animation or TV animation, and each of those are also different to each other. But for games, it's specifically, a lot of the time you're just working with cycles, so it's just a set amount of frames. Usually it could be like 30 frames, 60 frames, and it'll just be a loop of walking, running, an attack, something like that. And it has to be made in a way that can flow into other movesets. So for instance, when you're running, and you want to like attack, you need to be able to make sure that that looks great and flows right into the next animation. Games also, these days at least, focus on a lot of cutscenes as well, especially for story-driven games. And these work more or less like they would in film, or it's like, you get a storyboard and you animate to the storyboard, and there you go.
Yeah, because I've noticed that where in games you'll have a cutscene in game, and then a cutscene, and then another cutscene that's way more advanced. Like it seems to be more crisp, and the animation looks better per se than in game. Is that the reason why? Because they're completely two different platforms?
It really depends on the game, because some games, especially these days, because engines are getting so much better looking, it means that we can basically use the engine itself and just have a camera in the game moving to where this happens. This also means, though, most of the time there's usually a separate model that's been used for the animation, because you switch out the game model for the animated model, which is usually, I think it's like, what's the word? I think it's baked animation, which means that most of the keys will be on every frame so that it's implemented correctly. But yes, so for cutscenes specifically, it can also be a pre-render, which is what I guess everyone would be mostly familiar with, is where, your old games would have like a cutaway into some fancy looking rendered fully like realized movie, and then you go back to your low poly like thing.
Oh yes.
it's changed so much since then. There's still, like, pre-rendered cutscenes still happen, and I think it's usually because it's a smaller file size to just add in, but we can get away with doing everything inside an engine these days.
Now, is an example of this the Legend of Spyro: A New Beginning, that ending cutscene where he defeats Cinder? Is that a good example? Because that you can see that transition from game cutscene to like a cinema cutscene.
Yes, and it's interesting too because I don't think it was in A New Beginning, but in the Eternal Night, you would have two different kinds of pre-rendered cutscenes, and it's very obvious when they happen. Actually, there was some in A New Beginning, and it's usually when you notice, especially if you're playing on a bigger screen, with like emulation and stuff, like you'll notice if a cutscene is a bit fuzzy. That's usually because it's been like pre-made and then inserted into the game.
Okay.
So, for instance, you know, when Spyro first meets Ignitus, it starts off being an in-game cutscene, but then halfway through it inserts a pre-render. But then
that
you've
one's
got
not as noticeable though.
It's not unless you are playing on an emulator.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Because the gameplay resolution is upscaled, and so the video is not. And it's very clear.
Okay.
And then you've got the beginning cutscene and the end cutscene, like you're saying. They're a lot more like finalized and, I guess, more movie quality. And that is because they've literally got separate models and probably animated in a completely different software for a more cinematic approach. And it's honestly whatever the studio decides to do.
That's interesting. That's very interesting.
Yes.
Alright, so question 2. So basically, animation can be summed up as a collection of many frames combined to create an illusion of life and movement. How do you know about starting this process, and how do you know when it's ready to be sent to the programmers?
Right, so in a typical production, you would start by you would, like, as an animator, you would be received the storyboards, for instance, or a general, I guess, list of things that the animator wants that the director wants in terms of like animation for cycles. So for Glyde, I got a list of different things that the NPCs will need to use. Things like idles, and walking animations, also the transitions from like sitting to standing, and there's like the wounded animation for when you need to heal the dragons when they're corrupted. And so I'll get a bunch of those and start by blocking out the key poses. So you'd, for instance, if it was a sit transition, you would want to have obviously your idle pose, and then you want to have the sitting idle pose. So you want to make sure that your animation gets from the one to the other seamlessly. And
okay.
So in this case, you put your key poses down, and that's when you have to start adding your in-betweens, which could be basically the middle transition. Because if you just spline that, all you're gonna get is a sliding movement, and it looks really bad and very just dodgy. So you have to make sure that the movements are all believable, have weight, using those beautiful 12 principles of animation, and you have to make sure you got your anticipation and your follow-through all in the blocking. Like, this is like, you want to get as much information into your blocking as you can before you actually spline it and make it flow, because there's more work in that process than there is in the blocking. Blocking is basically what 2D animators do the whole way through. Splining is only process that 3D animation has to do. Otherwise, well, not has to, but in order to make it like smooth movement, if you wanted a more 2D approach where like it's like on twos like Spider-Verse, you probably are going to do a mix of splining and cutting certain keys out kind of thing.
Okay.
And then once you've got all your blocking sorted, you then go into the splining process, which is basically to see if there's any errors in the posing. So maybe you need to like shift a foot frame, a couple frames forward so that it's offset to the other foot, for instance. Or
looks more natural.
Yeah, exactly. And so you're just adjusting things at that point, where you should be. And then the polishing phase is where you go in and do the smaller details, which I don't think I had too much that I could do with the Glyde NPCs, only because the rigs at the current moment are very like rudimentary. In the full game, we want to have like full like face rigs that can actually like properly emote, and probably like it depends on I guess what happens, but ideally you'd want like things like fins and extra like bits and pieces to actually move how they should. Like for instance, right now our nature dragons, they have like I guess like some plants on their horns and stuff.
Yeah.
But they don't move, they're just static.
Plant growth.
The water dragons have fins and things that
the frills.
should be rigged on its own separate bones, but the problem is like we were just using the same rig and transferring between them.
So they're just a static image at the moment.
Yes. Well, the fins and stuff, they're quite static, or they're like combined in a way to make it work. Like the one that I had the most trouble with was the first water dragon, which has fins that go from its head down its neck.
Yes.
Which meant that those fins had to be rigged on multiple bones, and I had to make sure none of it was like clipping each other or like looking distorted and stuff. And that one took me quite a bit to properly do, and that was before I even figured out the easiest way to transfer the weights across. So, that was the dark ages.
You did a good job on that one, because that's actually my favorite NPC or favorite dragon out of all of them. That's my favorite one.
Well, that's good to hear then.
I don't know why, I just really like it.
But yeah, the way we figure out when it's finished, technically, animations are probably never fully finished. There's always things you can do to make them a bit better, or you know, maybe there's a better way to do something. But in Glyde's case, it's mostly just whenever I've finished doing it, and I think it's good enough to be thrown in. For the final game, it'll be probably a lot more focused on, in the sense of like, we'll actually sit down and talk about what needs to be like fixed, or what should be better and stuff like that. But yeah, for now they're just made to look like they work.
The looks look pleasing, very pleasing.
Yeah, the concept artist did a very good job.
Yeah, and the fact is, like, you know, you're mentioning all this stuff, like all the work you want to do to this, and it's like it's demo. This is a lot of work for a demo, so for the full game, I can't imagine how detailed these are going to be.
Oh yeah, that's the plan anyway. We're gonna hopefully have a lot more specific like animations, maybe a lot more idols and variations, and hopefully they'll look very immersive, basically.
The more you guys talk about it, the more I get excited for the full game, because I mean the demo is a game itself, and the fact that you guys want to offer more to make it more realistic, to more in-depth detail to these characters, into the world of the game, it's mind-blowing, because what you guys have already is an actual game. So it's gonna be very, very awesome. I can't wait to see what you guys have in store.
Yeah, hopefully, if the funding does go through and everything is working out, hopefully it'll blow people away.
Oh, I mean, it already has. So that's pretty awesome. So, now on more of a personal note here, explain a little bit of how you got into animation, since that's basically what you do.
Yeah, so I was always into art, so I've still got a lot of really cursed looking pictures from when I was a kid. And I think a big thing that pushed me towards art and animation was Spyro, for sure. I would draw dinosaurs a lot, but Spyro actually, like, I got, like, you know, would get in and copy a lot of the concept art, and, like, do my own little, the dragon species things, and all this stuff. But then it wasn't until I saw specifically YouTube animators that I realized that it was something that I could do. Because when you're watching a lot of 3D animations, like your big Pixar and Disney movies and stuff, you, like, as a kid, you don't really think about the fact that someone made them. You more so kind of just acknowledge that they exist.
Yeah.
So once I got that kick of, like, oh, this is actually something people can do for a living, it really, like, I guess pushed me into learning a lot more about it. And I think I had to have been in, like, at least, like, grade 4 or something, where I wanted to, like, just do art, and it probably was around grade 5 and 6 where I was like, I'm gonna be an animator. And here I am.
Lived up to that.
Yep, it's been a pretty interesting, like, journey, I guess.
You know, you are right about that. Like, when you watch, I mean, you know, as a kid, so even for me, since I'm not into that kind, well, I don't want to say I'm not into it, but I don't do animation. I mean, you know, from a kid to now, it's like I look at an animated show, and it's like, well, now it's different because I look at it a different way, but it's like, yes, you think it's there. I have no idea how it's created. It's just there.
Yeah, exactly.
But, you know, after talking to, you know, you and some other people that are into animation, it's like how it's broken down. It's every time I have a new meaning to watching animation shows, because it's like, okay, someone did this, someone drew this, and someone created this, and I'm just watching the movements of this character, and it's like, wow, someone had to come up with all of this for this to work. I don't know, I get more into it now because I see how it's done, and if it's an animation that's like an animation show that was really, really well done, then I'm even more intrigued. Like, how do they do this? How do they make it so realistic? Body motions and everything to the real world. Even
as an animator, like, these days I watch movies a lot differently, and, like, I know to a degree, like, you probably should just be watching it for the enjoyment, and I do, but, like, at the same time, there's, like, that part where you're like, you're able to pick up on, like, things, just so, like, you'll notice a shot, for instance, and you're like, wow, that shot's so satisfying, and you can pick out, like, oh, it's because, like, this arc movement was so good, and this acting was, like, on point, or, like, this subtle, like, eye dart was really good in this, like, specific point of time. Things like that, and like, I remember watching How to Train Your Dragon 3 and seeing the sand, and just, like, in the cinema being like, oh my god, that's sand! Because it's very hard to do simulated sand.
Is that because it's you're trying to act more like a fluid, but it's not really a fluid?
Yeah, it's a solid. So you're not dealing with, like, a liquid sim, you're dealing with, like, grains, and making sure it doesn't look flat, or... Yeah, just...
But you need the flow.
Exactly, and especially,
but hold its shape.
Yeah, especially when you have characters interacting with sand, it's like... Oh. It's just... You just gotta make it look good. But yeah, it's impressive what people can do these days.
Is that the same with snow?
Yeah, I would say it is. I think I can't really think of anything with snow in current animated films. I'm currently working in one, but not one that's been released yet.
We will never know, at least not yet.
I guess so. But yeah, I would assume like interacting with snow is also a difficult thing, or at least like, you know, I mean, most simulations of things are difficult, but I just remember like this, like sand specifically, the way it like clumps as well. It's very specific.
Just sounds complicated.
You could say that, yeah.
But awesome. So that was anything else to add to your journey into art and animation?
I can give a small rundown of how I started.
Sure.
So I guess like once I figured out that you could do animation, the first thing I did in my high school was we had access to Adobe Flash. A terrible program, but that's what I did a bunch of like small 2D things for a little while. A couple of really old things. Yeah, that weren't actually too bad at the time when I made them, but definitely look bad now. And then at the same time, I also was using Blender at home because it was free, and was just doing my own character modeling, and rigging and stuff like that. And I actually managed to get a fully working Griffin in Unreal Engine in around like 2015, I want to say. It was very old version of Unreal.
That was 8 years ago.
Yeah, it was a long time ago.
You know, it's crazy. 2015, I have fond memories of certain things. You know, like, you know, I fly RC helicopters, so it's like certain things that happened that in 2015 that was like super great, and now I'm just remembering. It's like, wow, that was 8 years ago. Holy crap!
So long ago. Yeah, I was still in high school at that point. And yeah, so I would do a lot of this stuff on my own. I had to make sure that I could get an OP to get into university, and I did. I managed to get exactly what I needed, and then got into QUT, and then did my Bachelor of Animation, met a bunch of people, got a big upgrade in skills. Still could have been better. Like, a lot of these universities don't have like the deepest of animation degree, like if you were to go to a full art school or something, but it's enough to like get you started if you work on it on your own as well. And then yeah, after graduating, I did a couple of small things for a tutor, and then got a job at the Pixel Zoo, which was an experience. Got a bit of a portfolio, and then managed to score my own place on a movie, which is very cool.
An actual movie too.
An actual movie.
Yeah. That's really cool.
I went from YouTube toy shows to a film.
To an actual film. That's really cool to hear that story from the very beginning to now. I mean, you're not just someone that wants to do it. You are literally living the dream that you started way back then. So that's really cool.
Yeah,
and you're still
been a long time coming. Yeah.
and you're still progressing further on. That's awesome. Congratulations on all that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, Glyde is definitely.
And Glyde is the side project I've been working on for the past 3 years.
and I feel like Val has a great person on the team for this, because you are literally becoming your way to becoming you're on your way to becoming a professional in this. Actually, you already are a professional when it comes to that kind of stuff.
I'm already a professional. What you saying? But yes, it's
not on your way for professional. You are the professional.
Exactly. But yeah, it's like you're learning everything all the time, and like there's a good chance that I could end up in a game studio after this to get a bit more of an insight on how it actually works in a proper game environment. But
oh, that's sweet. That's really sweet.
Yeah, but there's a lot of things that you're gonna keep learning no matter what. You can only get better, and if you don't keep learning, you end up being stagnant, and you'll be like a 20-year veteran of animation who's as the equivalent of a junior in skill level. It happens. I've seen it. I have friends who've seen it. But yeah, it's always about striving to better yourself.
Don't live in a rut.
No.
Don't live in a rut. Yep, that's good advice. Alright, so next question here is, what is rigging? You know, I've heard it used many times, and I don't know what it is. I mean, other than you mentioned in the Glide chat that some of the NPCs were rigs. I mean, so we can't beat them or anything? Like, that's not fair. Like,
yeah, that was pretty
rig
funny.
A game.
Yeah, like rigging is all it is just giving a skeleton to a character. So, because you get your mesh that's been 3D modeled, and most people can understand that process. But rigging itself is you're creating the skeleton that's going to be used to move the mesh, basically. And it's a bit of it's one of those jobs that is very technical in nature. It's not so much an art aspect. It's way more in the technical side, and a lot of it's one of the more profitable jobs, actually, because like not many people go into animation wanting to be a rigger. Usually what happens is you learn about it, you kind of do it in your own time for your own projects, and sometimes people and companies will need an extra rigger, and if you've learned enough you can go into that, but it depends on what your goal is.
That reminds me a lot of programmers or people that deal with C++ and dealing with that algorithm. That is a foreign language to everyone. But there's certain people that's all they do, and that
exactly.
Their professional careers of just dealing with C++ and programming.
Yep, and that's another thing too, is like rigging does involve quite a bit of code as well. If you want to create more complicated rigs and solve issues and stuff like that, coding is always helpful, and I think it's very much encouraged as well. But yeah, and so a bit of the process of rigging. So what you're doing is you're placing like bones. They don't look like actual bones, but they're meant to be imitating bones. So you do place these in roughly the position that you would in real life. So you would have your femur and radius and ulna and all that stuff. You can skimp out on like a lot of the hand bones, but you do want each individual finger bone, and you want to make sure that the hand can like curl and stuff. So you want to make sure the bones line up very well to how an actual person would move. In like a dragon's case, you're basically guessing, but you can assume from majority of quadrupeds what that would look like as well.
Right. That's crazy how you have to literally design the skeleton of the character you're designing before you can do anything else.
Yes.
For the movement. I mean, you literally have to build a skeleton of an actual skeleton.
Yep. It's cool too, if this is a little off topic, but if you there's a lot of simulated muscles as well. So you'll see a lot of like for instance, a good one everyone will know is like the live action Lion King. It's not live action, but the models they used for the lions and stuff, they would have created every muscle and simulated that as the rig moved.
Good gosh.
Which is how they got such a like realistic look. Not to mention the AI that they added as well, but you know, off topic. But yeah, so
talk about AI stuff.
once we have the bones in place, you'll create controllers, which is basically making a it's like the strings of a puppet. So if the bones are the puppet, the controllers are the strings. So you'll have boxes around the feet, for instance, and that helps selecting them, because the bones are going to be inside the character, so it's going to be annoying having to click them individually. So instead you have actual like representatives of said bones, so you can easily select and move these things. And controllers are usually like, you know, you got boxes or like circles surrounding the elbow or something. You probably can see it in the video that's being shown. The lines everywhere, that's the controllers. And once you have the controllers down, you attach your skeleton to the mesh, and then the process is finessing all the weight distribution, which is basically attaching the mesh to the skeleton. And that part is the most tedious, and I hate it.
A lot of time and a lot of work goes into that.
A lot of time and a lot of work. And especially to make it look good, you want deformations that don't intercept. So, like when you move your arm, for instance, if you were to bend your elbow all the way in, you see how like the muscles, like they're not going through each other, they're like squishing, right?
Yeah.
A good rigger will make sure that deforms how it would in real life. So it's very, and usually that's with blend shapes, which is a correction method, just to like that automatically happens when that happens. And it also depends on the production as well. If it's a very high-end production, like let's example Pixar, they're probably going to have thought of everything, and they also give you a lot more control as well, just so like if things, you know, if you specifically want something moved, then you can. Lower end productions are a little bit different because lesser budget means less finessing on rigs, usually. And then you just kind of have to make sure you're not pushing anything too far or breaking any rigs. Sometimes there's also tools as well that allow you to sculpt into the characters without you needing to send them back to rigs. For instance, I've been using this dog rig for my work, and sometimes when you stretch or curl up the body, the actual mesh will like crumple. So you go in with the sculpt tool and you just smooth it out and it looks a lot better. Stuff like that. And once you have the weights implemented, they're probably not going to be perfect the first time, obviously. Then you want to do testing. Like sometimes we'll do things like calisthenics where you will pose in very specific ways so that you can view every movement of what the character's going to be doing, and that way you can tell what exactly needs to be fixed, and then you just polish what you can. Okay. Add your blend shapes for expressions, which is basically like, it's basically being able to like properly create certain expressions and things like that. And yeah, and then once you have the rig, it's good to go for animation. It's a bit of a process.
That's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work, yeah.
I'm actually going through that video right now, watching, and it's... wow.
And that's not even the full process. That's just like the weight transfer process.
This is confusing. This is so... I mean, this is cool, but this takes a long time to understand this.
Oh yeah, I mean...
to be able to go through all this, and this is years worth of knowledge right here.
To be honest, I would say it's not actually as hard as it looks. Like, in terms of the process. The hard part comes with fixing things when it breaks, or hard part would also be like making sure everything works the way you want it to.
Mm-hmm.
The actual process itself isn't actually too hard to get your head around, because you're just placing a skeleton, attaching it to a mesh, and then making sure each thing works the way you want it to.
Right.
So, and also every program is going to have different methods for this as well. You also got some plugins as well that can help this kind of process, and it's a lot easier. But yeah, it's. I don't think you'd need like years to learn it, but I do think you'd need years to perfect it, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Anything else in that topic?
I think that's as much as I'm willing to give.
Okay.
Without getting too technical.
Alright, then we're gonna go to the next question then. When creating a character model for animation, what are the things that are crucial for it to work properly?
So, the main important thing is good topology. And topology is basically how all the polys and edges line up with each other, is the most basic way of putting it. So there's specific, like, I don't want to say rules, but specific guides on how, like, human faces should be done, and usually that's the same process is applied to things like animals and stuff as well. You need to make sure loops are all extremely well placed for deformation. For instance, you want more loops around the joints because that's what's going to stretch, and so you want the actual, like, bend to have enough mesh there to deform properly.
Okay.
And if you have bad topology, usually you'll find errors in your rigs because things won't bend the way you want them to, and it's a very important part. Another part would be good UVs, because if you have what looks like, I'll just explain what a UV is first.
Yeah, I was about to say, it's like UV is violent. I will say that because we talked about this.
Exactly. So a UV map is basically what you're applying the texture to the mesh. So you get your mesh and you're basically unfolding it. It's kind of similar to what people who make plushies do. You have to make a pattern that's can be stitched in a 3D shape. So you create a model usually first, and then you map out all of, like, the patterns of said shape, and then you cut them up, flatten them, and that becomes your UV map that you draw onto, basically. And the U and the V, I found out, was literally just like an X and Y scenario of, like, up and to the right. I don't know why it's named this, but it is.
It is
so
what it is.
It is what it is, and the UVs are responsible for the texturing. So if you have bad UVs on your model and you are moving it around, you can come across, like, texture problems, and that's not good either. You don't want anything to be too stretched or too crumpled, because then things can look weird. And the last thing I'd probably say is it depends entirely on what you're doing these days, but you want an appropriate amount of polys. Polys being the, like, little shapes that make up your model. If you have too many, it can cause major problems with lag, and so you have a hard time actually moving anything in your scene. If there's too little, unless you're going for a stylized, low poly look.
Classic spiral look.
You're gonna get weird deformation. Like the classic Spyro look. It's
very low poly.
Very rudimentary, very low poly. It works for what it's doing for the time, but if something like that came out today, it would be very bad looking.
Correct me if I'm wrong here, but the whole reason for, well, I mean, obviously this was back in the 90s when the classic Spyro came out, but the reason why they couldn't go with a certain poly count is because it was going to be too hard for the system. The system wasn't going to be able to run it.
Basically, yeah. So again, too many polys can cause lag and problems. You need to be able to have an appropriate amount for what you're doing. The reason why I say appropriate is because these days as well, things like Unreal Engine and a lot of technology has improved so much that we can have higher counts of polys, which means that things are smoother, more detail can be added, stuff like that. But usually, you just want enough to get what you're doing to the state you need it to. Too many doesn't make sense. Too little also doesn't make sense. You kind of need a feel for it.
Now, when you're saying like too many doesn't make sense, is it only because of lag issues?
Pretty much.
Or is it or does it get to a point where it's just there's too much to work with?
Well, that kind of goes hand in hand. Too many polys, you're not gonna see it. The polys in the like final animations and stuff like that, but the programs will see it. That's the main problem. It also, I'm pretty sure more polys also means longer render times as well. So
yeah.
There's a lot of impacts.
Because I was kind of like, and maybe I'm wrong with this, but I was like relating the poly count as in like TV resolution, where, you know, from 720 to 1080 to 2K, 4K, 8K, you know, as technology progresses, we're able to have more pixels in between the screens. Is there ever such thing as too much? Well, no, as long as they can keep on making smaller pixel counts, then we'll eventually get a better resolution every time. Is that similar?
Yeah, it's a lot different for this. It's less like, oh, more is better, and more of what's the optimal approach, because you can have, like, let's say a computer allows you to have as many polys as you want. There really isn't any need for it. It also makes the UVs look a lot more like messy and hard to read properly. And it's just unnecessary. Like, if someone has like a lower spec computer than you as well, and you're handing them a high poly mesh, they're probably gonna have problems.
Good point.
And you can get, like, it, and texture-wise, it doesn't really matter how many polys you have, as long as the UV map itself is large. You can have as high a resolution of texture as you want. So it doesn't matter how big your squares are or how small your squares are. If the whole map itself is small, you're gonna have like pixeling. But if the whole map is big, then you won't get pixeling. That makes sense.
It does.
Yeah. They're both like independent of each other. So yeah, I think that's about it for that.
So a while ago, you showed me a rig that you're working on for Glyde. To me, all I saw was a bunch of lines beside the character you were working on. Can you explain a little about what I saw and how it worked?
Yes, I can do a little bit of an explanation. So this is specific to Blender. Blender uses vertex groups in order to relate the weights to the bones. So what that means is every bone has its own vertex group, which you will assign what limb, for instance, will be attached to it. So say if I pick the head vertex group, this is relating to the head bone, so therefore I'll paint only what the head should be moving. And it should show a bit of this on the screen as well. And so that's what the list on the side is all about. It's just basically crunching down every single bone, and it's an easy way to change between them when I need to paint for something specific. And that's probably as deep as I can get into it, because otherwise it might get a bit too technical. But yeah, it's all about just relating weight to bones.
Okay. Yeah, because it was interesting to watch what you're working on and how you did it, but at the same time, it was just going right over my head. It's like, oh my gosh, what is all this? How can you keep track of it?
Yeah, and this just comes down to, like, yeah, just knowing what you're doing.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's totally understandable. I mean, it's and I try to relate this stuff to the hobby that I'm in, to the RC helicopter or the RC plane world, and you know, I talked to you about like programming gyros, flybarless units. You know, these are digital gyroscopics for the aircraft, for the helicopter, and how to be able to program this and what these settings do. I mean, for me, it was like, oh yeah, you just do this, and this. You know, like go through a whole list of things. It's, you know, no problem for me. I know how to do this. But for someone else, like, you do what? What is 120 ccpm? Like, what does this mean?
Something that seems very, like, straightforward is not.
Exactly, yeah. So that's my language. This is your language. You know, eventually, you know, if this is something that you like, you will eventually understand it. You will learn it. Yeah,
precisely.
But yeah, so it's like it's just to me, it's like I look at it, it's like, wow, this is so foreign to me. It's cool what I'm looking at, because I'm seeing someone that's, you know, like you, you know, I'm seeing a professional do their work, do what they do on their daily basis. It's actually really cool. Like, I've got a good friend who is he does C++ programming, and to see what he does, it's like, dude, how do you understand this? I just see a bunch of letters. That's all I see. But it's, to him, like, he's able to design things, and be able to program circuit boards that he built to do certain things, to do certain functions. Even the stupidest things, like, he just for fun, he'll make something. It's like, I was bored, I made this, and he hands me a circuit chip and it does a certain thing. It's like, this is actually really cool.
It's true, yeah.
It's like, you just came up with this in a couple days. So it's fascinating to be able to see that.
Exactly. It's always cool as well, because a lot of the time, things like this will have a specific, like, I guess, touch from the person who made the thing. So everything is unique, which is very cool.
Yeah, and that's what's great about being able to talk to someone. It's one thing to actually see, like, a video of someone doing it, but to actually be able to to interact with a person doing it, where they can one-on-one explain to what they're doing and show you what they're doing, that makes it different. That makes it more enjoyable to be able to attend and watch.
Yeah, I agree.
First-hand experience of how it's done. Still goes over my head, but it's still cool.
Yeah. I think that's the thing too, is, like, you don't have to understand everything. But being able to watch it it's like, it depends, I guess, on the person, but it can be very entertaining.
Yes. I mean, everyone's different, but for me, I love just learning new things. Even if it's something that I'm not into, I like learning about how it's done, or just watching how it's done. It draws my attention.
Yes. Alright, onwards.
Alright, next question is, what are some of your favorite animation examples from current media, like game shows, movie, etc., stuff like that?
Yep, so some of my favorites, like, it's quite a broad question. So I'll say, like, my favorite film of all time is How to Train Your Dragon 2. It has some like, and even the third one has like probably even better animation, but
yeah, why 2?
2, I mean, without going into spoiler territory, I really like the continuation story from the first movie. Like, I adore the first movie, but the second one,
Right.
it just feels like a really natural progression. Like, there are still like some problems from the first film that are still prevalent, but they're like different now. So I just like the way the story evolved in that way. The third movie is still like a really good ending, in my opinion.
Oh, but it hits so hard, though.
Not my favorite overall film. Yes, it's more like the good ending, but overall isn't like as fun, for instance, as like the first or second movie. And that's just a given. It's usually how trilogies work. But yeah, I do really love the animation in those movies. It's a mix between being very grounded, but also being very expressive. And I think it's also very cool that DreamWorks trained all the animators in a flight school so that everyone could learn the different ways the dragons moved. And it's specifically flying. It's very cool.
I did not know that, and that really intrigues me, because I love flying.
Yeah, everyone would be like specifically taught how to make the dragons fly correctly and stuff like that. Because it is a very specific like thing.
That is news to me. That is awesome.
Because otherwise, yeah, you're gonna get it's gonna be painful getting a lot of different animators to try and do the same thing off the top of their head. So it makes sense to have like an actual like little small tutorial thing.
That is great.
That everyone got to get into. Yeah, that's cool.
I have more respect for that movie now. I mean, I love it already, but I have more respect for that movie. The fact they actually had the fundamentals of flight, you know, the 4 basic fundamentals of flight in that movie. Hell yes. Majority of big studios, games and film, they will have very thorough, how would I explain it? They're very thorough in research. So, for instance, it's something as simple as like Coco, the whole setting. No, let's say Luca. The whole setting of Luca is like, it's like based off a real place. So they all, like a couple, I think it was, there was quite a lot of them went to Italy and researched, took photos, actually like went to the place and studied it so that they could replicate the vibe in a film. And that's a very key point of production, is making sure you know what you're doing and you have enough reference to convey that. That's how you get things that are a lot more insensitive, is when you get films that don't actually properly look into what they're doing. Or like, yeah, shows even, they'll like make some kind of character, and usually if it's like people that don't care, you'll know, because these different ethnic characters will be very either stereotypical or just like extremely deaf on people's expectations. It's like it's ugh. But yeah, I'm getting a bit off topic. But yes, and then other things like classic films like The Lion King, Beauty and the Beast. Like just the fluidity of those films and the way the characters move and express is so unique. And just... Those are old films, too.
Old films, and they still, like, to this day, hold up. And it's just because they're drawings. Like, it's quite crazy. Like, you'll watch something like Jaws or Jurassic Park, and you see, like, the early CGI.
Yes.
The puppets themselves hold up really well. Because they're a physical creation, whereas the CGI, because it was so, like, new... you could easily see like problems in the current time. And with Jaws, like, the mechanics of the shark was very noticeable.
Very, very noticeable in Jaws. Not so much in Jurassic Park because it was much later on, of course.
Yes, so they had also had, it's again like the perfection of like puppetry. So they managed to pull it off a lot better.
They did.
But yeah, but then like films like from like using these animation mediums of 2D drawings, they're just so timeless because it's a drawing. You can't age a drawing as much as you can age like early computer generation. And I think that's very impressive. I also may be very biased, but I really like the animation direction of Spyro, the Reignited trilogy.
Okay, yeah.
The way he moves and like the key poses are like very smooth, very good, very satisfying. I think it's all about the satisfyingness. So if you see a film and the way characters move is satisfying, then it's amazing animation because you don't want to look away. And that's all in the movement and expression and character acting, which is really cool.
It makes it more real.
Yeah.
Like, is this really how a dragon would act like if they were with us right now? If Spyro, you know, that size, you know, because he's a smaller dragon, of course, you know, him in the real world, that size, I can see him acting just like this. Like, I can see the motions of his movement would be just like this. The way he kicks excited, you know, his facial expressions, all this stuff, I can see this in real life. They do a good job at that.
Yeah, and I think the real lifeness as well just comes down to relating character personality with action and making sure that everything still feels grounded, no matter what. Someone could animate the most crazy thing. I guess the best example of this would be like Wile E. Coyote. So you have like characters being like smashed on the head or like crushed in a boulder, flattened on the road, stuff like that, like, which is clearly not real. Anyone can look at that and be like, oh, you know, that's impossible. But because the characters move in such a weighted, grounded way, like for instance, you know, when they're running, they're not just sliding across the screen, they have like weight to the mechanics of the way they're running.
There's motion.
Or there's motion, there's like a feeling of timing, so the way things move, like if you're gonna have something with impact, you want to have like that anticipation and then that speed in the actual motion, all the way down to like the recoil. Like it makes it a lot more believable, and I think that's what makes animation so crazy, is that it can be as fake and made up as you want, but as long as you have like the fundamentals of like real life in there, you can create these believable worlds. Things that people would watch and be like, yeah, that makes sense, you know?
Yeah. I was watching this might be off topic, but I was watching it was just a random meme cartoon, an actual cartoon that someone put up there, but it was something that I really enjoyed. It's like, you know what, it's kind of like Tom and Jerry. Tom and Jerry is one of those shows that was like, that I really enjoyed, because nothing makes sense. Like, a guy picks up a railroad track, like literally the whole track, moves it in to try to go in line with this house, because he wants to take out his enemy, and the train barrels in, the guy opens the door, the guy, you know, so it doesn't go in his house, it goes inside of the house and comes out his barn door, you know, and, you know, gets transported into the barn door, and then goes after the guy who placed the tracks, or, you know, goes after the bad guy. So it's fake, completely unrealistic, but it's just the way the motion it goes, it just like, it looks good, and it's funny, it's awesome. Exactly.
It's good stuff. But yeah, there's so many things out there that are like some of my favorite animations. Like, I mean, everyone's familiar with Spider-Verse, and it kicked off a whole new way of thinking about animation, which is great. There's Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which has some of the best modern Western animation that I've seen in recent times. There's also the new Puss in Boots movie as well. Still very grounded, but also very abstract as well in its the way it moves. Yeah, it's Ratchet and Clank, the newest one, has some beautiful animation, all hand done, so good.
There's a new one?
Well, the one for the PS5, yes.
Oh, I have never played it, so I don't know what's out there. I know I'm gonna get a lot of hate mail for that one.
You got a lot to learn, boy.
Starting from you. I'm gonna get hate mail starting from you.
I'll have to hook you up with some emulators.
Yeah.
But yeah, and there's so much out there that's insanely good. I think a lot of people, I think a lot of people take it for granted because so much effort gets put into these, and a lot of the time people are only gonna watch them once, which is it's a bit sad.
I used to be one of those kind of people that took them for granted until I actually started, until, you know, like talking to you and understanding more about this, I start looking at them differently. I think you recommended me to watch Zootopia because I never watched that. And after talking to you and some other people about how, about animation stuff, and then watching that movie, it's like, wow, that actually is pretty good. And I look at it not only because it was a good movie, but also the amount of work that he put into this is, and how well it was executed was just fascinating. It was amazing.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes into it. It's because, like, there's a reason why you have hundreds of people on these teams, in different departments, all working together. And I think animation is a very important part of entertainment, for sure. I think it's also quite funny how some of the biggest grossing films of all time, most of them have some kind of animation in them. Like even like the Avatar, Blue People Avatar, it's animation. It's a specific type of animation, but it's still an animation, which is crazy considering I'm pretty sure James Cameron tries to keep calling it a live-action film, and it's like, no, stop.
It's
you
not.
lie. It's a hybrid, but yeah. So yeah, I think good animation is also subjective. People might not like how stop motion looks. Some people find it extremely charming. I love it. I also think it's very impressive. Just what people can do. But yeah, we can move on to the next question.
All right. And this is the final question here. So, any advice to people interested in heading into the animation industry?
The biggest one is just to be a nice person. You can get so far just by being, like, a good person to, like, you know, a friend. Something that I think a lot of people, they hear is, oh, you gotta network, you gotta know people, you gotta get places. And yes, it's true, but the idea isn't that you're meeting people in different studios and stuff. The idea is that you're making friends, and I think a lot of people don't realize that. Because I see it here as, like, a lot of students will want to go to, like, events held for animators, and you know that they're there because of networking. And I don't think that's actually how you should be doing it. The way networking works is all you're doing is making friends in the industry. I made friends at my uni. That helps a lot because when you know people they can vouch for you. That is just the way it goes.
Put in a good word, yep.
Yeah, but if you're friends, like, of course you're gonna have, like, people, like, recommending you. If you just know a person and you've talked to them once, that's not networking. They're not gonna recommend you. I got my newest job because the lead that I made friends with recommended me to them. So it's basically, that's all it is. It's just making friends, being a nice person. No one wants to work with
dragon fruits.
If you manage to get into a higher rank and you're
dragon fruits,
people are gonna leave. They don't want to be there. They don't want to help you with your project because you're not a nice person. It's as simple as that. That's the biggest thing, I reckon, is people need to make sure, stay humble. Don't brag about yourself. Like, explain what you've done, you know, obviously, and be excited about what you've done. There's no shame in that. But don't hold it over people's heads like you're some kind of god or something. Like, help them. Like, you know, like, give them advice to help them get to the level you're at and stuff like that. And the other thing would be, make sure you do side projects. Side projects, very important. You might have a decent show reel with, like, commercial projects and stuff, but recruiters do really, really like seeing that you are, like, pushing yourself in your own time as well. And it's also another way to stand out from the crowd if you're in the hiring process. But yes. Oh, yeah. And learn your 12 principles. That's a good start as any. Bouncing ball. There you go.
What are the 12 principles? That's the second time you mentioned that.
Whoa. Alright, let me see if I can remember them.
I'm putting you on the spot.
Yep. So, okay, let's see. So you got... these were made as well with 2D in mind, so some of them don't really apply to 3D. But you've got arcs, timing and spacing, follow-through, solid drawing. There's also anticipation, and you've got secondary action. Oh dear. Now we're getting into the... oh yeah, appeal. And staging, so the way like a shot's set out. I think that's 8. Oh.
Dragon fruits.
Straight ahead and pose to pose animation, which are the same one. They're just different methods. And there's like a couple more. But the main ones that you want to nail is timing and appeal. Probably like a really big one too. Timing and appeal. And
all about that timing.
Getting your weight down. All about the timing. Because like timing is what helps with getting your idea across. Whether it's impact or like if you see any like really novice people who haven't done animation before, usually you can tell because the spacing of all of the keys are very linear, so the head turn will be the same as the walking speed will be the same as like the jumping speed, and you can just tell immediately.
That's cool. That's very, very cool.
There's more of them, so look them up yourself.
A quick Google search will be able to help you out with that.
Exactly. And these are just a guide. These are not like, you have to have every single one and every single like shot you do. No. You select the one you need. Most of it, there's a few that you will need every time, but a lot of them come and go when you need them. So, yes.
Awesome. Cool. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we go to the closeout?
I think that's it. I'll just mention that animation is a very arduous career. Like you need to be in it for the long run. It's not something that I like anime. I want to be an anime artist. Like it doesn't work that way. You have to be like dedicated to learning everything. And
Give it your
it's
all.
very easy. It's very easy for people to realize that making an animation is a lot more work than they thought. It's the same with like making games. You think, oh yeah, I can do that, and then you start and you just don't get it.
Yeah.
And a lot of people drop out.
Yeah, that happens to a lot of people.
Yeah. So I'd say make sure it's like a full-on passion of yours. And also not everyone needs to go into a full career. Like if you like animation and art as a hobby, then it's literally like it's probably could be better and more beneficial for you to keep it as a hobby, because sometimes careers can burn you out of something you love as well. So you got to be aware of that as well.
That's a good one. Yes, that is the same with me in flying RC helicopters, is because there's opportunities to make my hobby into a career. But
yes,
that's one thing I don't want, because then it burns you out of that hobby, because every day it's considered work. Your hobby is not considered work. That's the reason why I never want to get a career in my hobby, because I want to treat it as a hobby. I don't want to get burnt out.
Yeah. And it's something, it might start off being fine, but then later on you realize that, yeah, you get home and you just don't want to do it. I think the way I balance it is because I like to draw in my spare time. I did used to consider being a concept artist, but I figured I would prefer doing that as a hobby rather than pursuing that and just going for animation itself, because I do want to be heavily involved with creating like characters that, you know, resonate with people. It's something I want to do. But yeah, art is its own thing, and even like playing video games is like a hobby, because, you know, you need some kind of downtime that's not too much effort as well.
Right.
But yes, please follow me on Twitter, Legendary Griffin. I'm also on DeviantArt, but probably not for very long. I think that's everything.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much, Griffin, for being a part of this for this episode, and giving your information and explaining basically what you do for Glyde and also what you do for your career as well. So thank you so much for explaining that. I'm sure a lot of people will gain value out of this episode.
Yeah, I hope people take away a couple notes, evaluate whether or not they're gonna pursue animation or not, because it is like, if you love it, you love it. It's like something you'll probably do for the rest of your life, honestly.
Yep. Awesome. So, close out. If you'd like to send us a question or feedback, you can email us at glydecast@gmail.com, and we will discuss it in the next episode. If you want more information about Glyde, you can visit glydethedragon.com. We are also on Discord. Look for us in the official Glyde the Dragon Discord server. If you want to help support the game, you can also contribute to Patreon. Benefits include exclusive Discord privileges and early access with voting capabilities on the game content, with an NPC with your own custom name in the message. Also, don't forget to check out the other dragon-related podcast, World of Dragons. Links for all this will be in the description. Also, a video version of this show will be available on YouTube. Thank you so much for listening to this episode, and we will talk to you in the next one. Bye!
Bye!
So, unlike other episodes, we are
Dragon fruits!
Okay. So, unlike other episodes, we just have... Why am I saying we? I'm the only freaking one that's... okay. So,
Dragon fruits.
Are you winning,
So-
son?
no. All right. So, question 2. So fundamentally, I can't say that word. Oh my gosh.
Fundamentally?
Fundamentally, here we go. Fundamental. Oh my gosh, I can't say it. What the hell? I can't say it.
You can say basically if you want.
Oh, thank you. Because I can't say it for some reason.
That's really funny.
Wow, I can't say. Okay, that's embarrassing.
Fundamentally.
I can't say it. That is so weird. So basically, animation. Okay, I'm gonna say it with a straight face. So basically, animation.
Dragon fruits.
You.
Sorry.
You did that
Bruh.
on purpose. Alright. So, I'm about to say the word again.
Dragon fruits.
Hang on.
I get. Thank
There
you. Has to change the word so I don't read it wrong or try to read it. Wow, I can't believe that is so embarrassing. Wow. Okay,